his eye. Then saying, "What are you looking so sad about, Jack?"
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right. What you just said.
What do you mean? What I just said?
I mean, I'm getting drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I bombed a bomber one tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
When you on the tour.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. How's the family today? Getting late in this big week of boxing history. Today we're going to talk about boxing in Cuba. Okay, it's Thursday. Continuing our trip around the world, we are going to be in Cuba today. You see Teofilo Stevenson on the screen. Although he never threw a punch as a pro boxer, he's still the most famous boxer to ever come out of Cuba, still to this date. Okay? They tried to get him and Ali back in the 70s, came close. One of their promoters had offered him a substantial, he wouldn't defect, okay? But he had got they offered the country, Fidel Castro, a substantial amount of money. And Castro went for it, and they were going to let Teofilo fight Muhammad Ali, but then the United States State Department stepped in and stopped it. They didn't want that much money going to the communist Cuban government, so they stopped the fight. Okay, the same government that stopped the United States from going to the 1980 Olympics. That's another story for another platform for another day. But today, boxing in Cuba. We never got Teofilo Muhammad Ali. Okay, he turned pro, back in like early 70s or 70s or something. He probably would have been a champion. Would have been one of those great heavyweights in the 70s. But boxing in Cuba today, we got a lot to get to, so let's get into it. We always start with our fight of today, fight of the day. So let's start with that. Okay, let's get into today's fight of the day. Okay, the fight of the day today is Muhammad Ali versus Jerry Quarry 1. This was Ali's first fight back after his suspension. After his 3.5-year hiatus from the sport, this was his first fight back. October 26, 1970, Ali's triumphant return. Ali versus Quarry 1. October 26, 1970. The fight of the day today. Okay, so let's get into it. Now, following his successful defense of the World Heavyweight Championship against Zora Frawley in March of 1967, Muhammad Ali's boxing career came to a sudden, though not unexpected halt. The following month, the man who had loudly proclaimed that he had no quarrel with the Viet Cong refused to be drafted into the United States Army and the war in Vietnam. He was immediately arrested. The New York State Athletic Commission then suspended his license and stripped him of his title, and all other state athletic commissions quickly fell in line. It would be 3.5 years before Muhammad Ali could compete in a boxing ring again. Okay, 3.5 years before he got back in there. Mike Rim is in the building. What's up, Mike? Muhammad Ali, Jerry Quarry 1. This is the Muhammad Ali's first fight back after his 3.5-year suspension. Okay? Salute, Mike. Okay, so. Yeah, 3.5 years before he could compete again once he got suspended. But by 1970, the social and cultural dynamic in America had changed dramatically. The Vietnam War was now deeply unpopular, and Ali, instead of being viewed as a loudmouth draft dodger and a traitor, he had become an important figure in both the anti-war movement and the ongoing civil rights struggle. Having spent much time during his forced exile speaking at college campuses and anti-racism rallies, while during the same period, Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, Fred Hampton, and others were murdered in the struggle for social justice in America. Muhammad Ali was now much more than a black boxer who happened to be vocal about his political opinions. He had become a living, breathing rebuke in the political establishment, a symbol of racial division, and a global celebrity, all rolled into one. Okay, he had become all that while he was exiled from the sport. And so, Ali's comeback fight in 1970 was about much more than sports. It was much more than just another professional prize fight. It was bigger than boxing. It was about justice and vindication and human rights. And perhaps more than anything else, it was about Black pride. Now, looking back, two intriguing aspects of this fight remain: the location and the choice of opponent. Now, during Ali's forced exile, and as his very legal appeals slowly meandered through the court system, numerous attempts had been made to secure him a return to the ring. Promoter and press agent Harold Conrad doggedly knocked on doors in 22 states in his effort to obtain a boxing license for Ali. Now, he came very close in California before then Governor Ronald Reagan declared that no draft dodger would compete in his state, and approval was promptly denied. Yeah, Ronald Reagan, he should have knew that. One of the most racist presidents of all time. But that's another show, again, for another platform. Yeah, but Ronald Reagan, he should have knew that was going to be denied. So it was denied in California. Ronald Reagan was the governor. But in Georgia, of all places, the situation was different, because in Georgia, they had no state athletic commission. So if the mayor of Atlanta approved, a boxing match could be staged in the city, and the governor was powerless to stop it, right? So a Black state senator in Atlanta named Leroy Johnson put some heat on Atlanta Mayor Sam Marcel, and at long last, Ali was back, much to the consternation of Georgia governor and segregationist Lester Maddox. In the words of activist Julian Bond, the event established Atlanta as the Black political capital of America, even as the Governor Maddox called for a boycott of the fight and proclaimed a day of mourning on the eve of the fight. Yeah, Lester Maddox was a segregationist, but he was powerless to stop the fight because Georgia had no athletic commission. And if the city of Atlanta approved it, it was nothing the governor could do, right? Now that picture right there is when Ali was actually in Atlanta taking a break from his training. I had that poster like 10 years after that fight. Yeah, but he was actually in Atlanta taking a break from his training. Now, so it was significant, the location and the opponent. Now, as for the choice of the opponent, Irish Jerry Quarry was considered one of the very best heavyweights in the world at that time, with only Joe Frazier and Jimmy Ellis ranked above him, right? So that's significant. Ali didn't want to come back against just anybody. He wanted to come back against the best. But his first fight was not going to be against Joe Frazier. Everybody knew that. And Jimmy Ellis was the only other one above Quarry. And it wasn't Ellis because Ali and Ellis were both trained by Angelo Dundee. And they did fight later. And Angelo Dundee had made it clear he was going to be in Ellis's corner because Angelo earned more money as Ellis's trainer and manager. So Ali didn't want his first fight back to be without Angelo Dundee, so that let Ellis out. So he picked the next top fighter, Jerry Quarry, okay? So, yeah. And only Joe Frazier and Ellis was ranked above Jerry Quarry. Now, it's testament to Ali's stature that a fight against a lesser or unranked opponent was not even considered. Okay? What boxer today would even contemplate taking on one of the 2 or 3 best fighters in their division after a 43-month layoff? None. Okay, none of them. Having never lost, Ali remained, despite the widespread recognition of Frazier as the new king of the big men division. Ali remained the undefeated heavyweight champion in many people's minds. But their claim would have suffered had he faced anything other than a legit top contender in his comeback fight. So he faced the number 3 heavyweight in the world, Jerry Quarry. Now, the fact Quarry happened to be white only added to the potent mix of symbolism and political display. Yep. Yeah, that part too. Quarry just happened to be white. Yeah, there is him and Quarry. Crush, the legend in the building. What's up, Crush? Fight of the day today is Muhammad Ali's comeback fight. Okay, salute Crush. And Thomas Hill in the building. Y'all know we all subscribe to Crush, but anybody out there listening within the sound of my voice, Crush the legend. You can subscribe to him and check him out. You'll come back and thank me once you see that good content he got over there. Okay, but salute. We got Mike Grimm, Crush the legend, Thomas Hill, and Miss Cass. Okay, let's continue. Yeah, Ali couldn't come back and face a lesser opponent because he wanted to keep that status. You know, a lot of people still had him as a heavyweight champion because he didn't lose his title in the ring. Now, if he came back and fought like the number 15th ranked contender, then everybody would say, nah, Joe Frazier is really the champion. So he came back and fought one of the top 3 heavyweights in the world, Jerry Quarry, after not fighting in 3.5 years. Wow. How many people would do that today? None. Okay, let's continue. And Jerry Quarry was white, so that added to it. You know, Ali being a big player in the civil rights movement at that time, so that just added more to it. The fact that Jerry was a white heavyweight. Okay, so and what a display it was. Ali versus Quarry was less an athletic contest than a historic event. The triumphant return of the exiled king. The elite of Black America descended upon Atlanta that night. The legendary Burt Sugar later called it the greatest collection of Black power and Black money ever assembled. That's what Burt Sugar called it. The greatest collection of Black power and Black money ever assembled. Among the celebrities present were Diana Ross, Jesse Jackson, Sidney Poitier, Curtis Mayfield, Murray Wilson, another Supreme, Arthur Ashe, Julian Bond, Whitney Young, plus a host of flamboyant hustlers and high rollers from the fast lane was also there. Like Burt Sugar said, the greatest collection of Black power and Black money ever assembled. All this for Ali's comeback. George Plimpton recalled the men in ankle-length fur coats or with felt hats and leather capes, stilted shoes, the heels like polished ebony. Many smoking stuff in odd meerschaum pipes. It was a kind of crowd and scene never witnessed before at a major sporting event. Yes, it was. And beyond this being Ali's first ring appearance since 1967, not to mention a fight for the lineal heavyweight championship of the world, there was good reason for all of this anticipation and electricity. The simple fact was that everything was on the line for Ali. If he lost, his standing both as a champion and an influential public figure would be vastly diminished. And the truth was, no one knew what to expect. After such a long layoff from action, would Ali still have the skills and the speed to compete at the highest level? And remember, Jerry Quarry was the 3rd best heavyweight in the world. Only ones better than him at that time was thought up was Joe Frazier and Jimmy Ellis. Okay? So nobody knew what to expect. Ali just wasn't going in there against no slouch. That was all by design, though, to pick one of the best heavyweights out there at the time. Okay? So what happened? Did he win? Or did Jerry Quarry take him out? Let's see. Now, to the relief of his assembled adulators, the opening round saw Ali gliding about the ring with swift grace, even as he started aggressively, catching Quarry again and again with a sharp left jab and shooting in the right hand behind it. So right away, immediately first round, Ali showed everybody, yeah, I still got it. Immediately. Everybody saw it right away that he still had it. He still had the movement, that jab, shooting that right hand behind it. But in the second round, and as Quarry picked up the pace, Ali's timing proved rusty. He blocked Quarry's hook effectively, but failed to counter, and already his legs seemed to be slowing. Still, his advantages in height and reach, if nothing else, allowed him to outbox the Bellflower Bomber. That was Jerry Quarry's name, the Bellflower Bomber. Yeah, Ali's natural advantages helped him out a lot too, because he was rusty. The man hadn't fought in 3.5 years. What you expect? And he in there against one of the best, right? He in there against one of the absolute best in the sport. Yeah, Jerry Quarry wasn't no slouch back then. Okay. Now in the third round, Ali continued to move and jab, while Curry sank a few good shots to the midsection. And then Curry attempted to bull rush Ali into the ropes. Now the moment he did, Ali struck with a snapping right that opened a deep gash above Curry's left eye. Yeah, Curry had a history of cutting easy too. And Ali knew that. So he opened up a cut over Jerry's left eye in the third round. And the blood poured down the side of Jerry's face. And the crowd wailed as Ali became the aggressor, honing in with his jab and forcing Quarry to give ground. A series of hard right hands set everyone on their feet as the Louisville Lip tried to end matters as quickly as possible. But Quarry weathered the storm. Yeah, Ali didn't get him out of there. Quarry went the distance with him. Yeah. At the bell, a bleeding and discouraged-looking Quarry trudged back to his corner, and as soon as his cornermen saw the severity of the cut, they called for the doctor. Seconds later, the referee signaled that the fight was over. Not the most satisfying of endings, but for Muhammad Ali's nervous fans, a win was a win. Both his undefeated record and his claim to being the rightful heavyweight champion of the world remained intact. And now, the drums begin to beat in earnest for a monumental showdown with that other undefeated champion. You know who it was? Smoking Joe Frazier. Yep. So Ali passed his first test. And that set it up. The fight of the century with Smoking Joe Frazier. Okay, boxing in Cuba today. That was the fight of the day. There's your winner, Muhammad Ali. But yeah, he came back. Most people at a 3.5 year layoff, they're going to fight the number 25th contender. Ali came back and fought the third best heavyweight in the world. You know, because he wasn't going to fight Joe Frazier in his first fight back. They had to let that marinate. And like I said, him and Jimmy Young had the same manager, Angelo Dundee. Angelo made it. When they did fight later, Angelo was in Jimmy's corner because he was Ali's trainer and Jimmy's trainer and manager. And as a manager, you got a larger part of the fighter's purse, so no brainer. Angelo was in Jimmy's corner, and Ali didn't want to have to go get another trainer for his first fight back. So Jimmy Young was out. So he picked the next man up. Jerry Quarry was number 3. Yeah. And like we said yesterday, Jerry Quarry's father ruined his career. Jerry was a great boxer, but his father always wanted him to go in there and get in brawls, go for the knockout because it looked popular with the fans. Yeah. Man ended up with pugilistica, dementia, and all kinds of dementia, pugilistica, all died from it. They say when Jerry Curry died at age 53, he had the mentality of a little child. He didn't even know who he was. He didn't even remember he had been a boxer. Yep. Okay, let's get into it. Boxing in Cuba today. There's the great Teofilo Stevenson. Never fought as a professional, but still thought to be the greatest boxer to ever come out of Cuba. Yeah, Teofilo. So let's look at a little history of boxing in Cuba first. Okay. This is boxing around the world today. Cuba. Tomorrow is the first Friday of the month. So we're going to do active boxing. It's going to be Earl the Truth Spence this week. The Truth, okay? But today, boxing in Cuba. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the history of boxing and boxing's background in Cuba to start things out. Okay. Of course, we're going to talk about women's boxing, that Cuban boxing style. You can't do a show about boxing in Cuba without talking about that legendary Cuban boxing style. So that's coming up too. But boxing is a popular sport in Cuba. As of 1992, there were over 16,000 boxers on the island. Now, across Cuba today, there are 494 boxing coaches and 185 facilities. Of the 99,000 athletes in Cuba currently, 19,000 are boxers, including 81 of Olympic competitors, even though only 12 make the Olympic team. Now, professional boxing was banned from 1962 until April 2022. Yeah, just 3 years ago, they just reinstated boxing in Cuba. Just 3 years ago. Now, the history of boxing in Cuba. Boxing originally arrived in Cuba as a tourist attraction, mainly as championship fights between North American boxers during the high tourist season. In 1909, Havana had its first professional fight, right? In 1910, a Chilean named John Budenich established the first boxing academy in Havana. 2 years later, government banned boxing due to the violence on the streets between blacks and whites. Now, fights had to go behind closed doors, as it still was popular throughout the island. Now, despite the banishment of the sport at the time, for the lower classes, boxing constituted a possible ticket out of poverty, as well as steady and reliable employment, right? You know, just like anywhere else in the world. You know, boxing was a way out of poverty. Reliable, steady employment. Wasn't no different in Cuba than anywhere else, right? Yeah, there's Crush the Legends link in the chat. Anybody? For everybody right there. Yeah, Thomas Hill got it. They appreciate you, T. Hill. Yeah, Cuba was no different from anywhere else. Boxing was a way out of poverty. Now, a very famous and controversial fight took place in Cuba on April 5th, 1915, when Jack Johnson, the world heavyweight champion, defended his title against Jess Willard. Yeah, that fight was in Cuba. Now, Willard won the fight and the title by a 26-round knockout, but the fight between the two Americans was controversial because it was suspected and rumored that Jack Johnson threw the fight. Okay? Now, recognizing boxing's potential to take families out of poverty and entertain crowds, on December 13th, 1921, the Cuban government decided to give boxing another chance and legitimize boxing with the establishment of the National Commission on Boxing and Wrestling. So they decided to give boxing another chance. Now, the lift of the ban brought tourist dollars with the fights. Years later, national boxing academies, the Cuban National Boxing Academy was established to train talented athletes. In the next decade, Golden Gloves amateur competitions had also arrived in Cuba. By 1959, Cuba had 6 professional world champions who were considered to be the founding fathers of boxing, as well as national heroes of Cuba. These fighters included Geraldo Kid Gavilan Gonzalez, Benny Parrott, and Eligio Kid Chocolate Sardinas. Now, in spite of the sport's promise of prosperity, the Cuban boxers who earned a lot of money in the ring almost commonly died imprecuniously. Okay? Some boxers also had ties with the mafia and other sources of corruption. But that wasn't just Cubans. Everywhere, around that time in the 50s, that this was occurring. The mob was running boxing. Okay? You wanted title fights and all that kind of stuff. You had to deal with the mob. Wasn't no other way about it. No two ways about it. You had to deal with the mob, or you wouldn't get a title fight. Now, Cuba's boxing reputation also drew foreign boxers as well, such as Jack Johnson, Jack Dempsey, Jess Willard, Joe Louis, Joe Brown, and Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, although Cuba had traditionally done well in professional boxing, it did not win an Olympic gold medal in boxing until after 1959. But then after that, it took off, right? In 1960, the professional boxer Benny Parrott won the world welterweight title and headed a strong contingent of professional Cuban boxers who followed up their 5th place at the 1954 Games, with a 1st place, a position they had held in all subsequent Central American Games. In the Pan American Games, where the competition was stronger, Cuban boxers also performed well, particularly from the late 1960s onward. The high international standard of Cuba's boxers was evident in the Olympic arena. In 1961, along with other sports, the revolutionary government banned professional boxing once again, right? Banned it again. However, thanks to a huge government financial investment, Cuba built a reputation in Olympic boxing. Yeah, they banned pro boxing, but they kept amateur boxing. Because, amateurs wasn't getting paid, and, the pro boxers always had that promoters from other countries trying to lure them away from Cuba. So they kept amateur boxing. Now, at the 1968 Summer Olympics, Cuba won 2 silver medals. At the 1980 Moscow Olympics, Cuban boxers swept the field, winning 10 medals, 6 of them gold. But just like last week, we was talking about the show, we said the 84 Olympics had an asterisk where the United States won 9 medals because the Cubans and the Russians weren't at that Olympics. You got to put an asterisk by 1980 when the Cubans won 10, because guess who wasn't there? The Americans wasn't there in 1980. And if the Americans had a great team in 1980, and they would have went, Cuba might have had 5 or 6, but they wouldn't have had no 10. Okay, but that was a year where Russia invaded Afghanistan, and then President Jimmy Carter wouldn't let the Olympic team go to the Olympics in Moscow. So you got to put an asterisk by that one too. Cuba wouldn't have had those 10 gold medals if the United States would have been there. Well, 6. They had 10 overall, 6 gold. They wouldn't have had all of those if the Americans would have been involved in that Olympics. Okay, that's just a fact. Now, at the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona, Spain, the Cubans outdid themselves with 7 gold and 2 silver medals. And the Americans was at that one. They got even more gold that time. Wow. By the 1980s, Cuban boxers were dominant in all major international amateur competitions, including the Olympics. Throughout Olympic history, Cuba has won 37 gold medals, 73 medals overall in boxing, second place in the all-time medal table to the United States. Cuba is the only country that has 2 3-time Olympic champions, Teofilo Stevenson and Felix Savon. And there's another one from Hungary. Laszlo Papp has 3. The GOAT got 2. But yeah, there's 3. Teofilo Stevenson, Felix Savon from Cuba, and Laszlo Papp from Hungary also has 3 Olympic gold medals. But the only reason they got 3 because the countries wouldn't let them turn pro. If the United States wouldn't let their people go pro, you would have had Americans with 4 or 5 gold medals if they just kept going to the Olympics 29, 30 years old fighting teenagers like these people was. But, I'm not trying to diminish their accomplishments, but I'm just keeping it 100. They was 29, 30 years old fighting teenagers when all the American best boxers were in the pro ranks, but these people couldn't go pro. So, that's not their fault, but let's keep it 100 here. They were grown men fighting kids, right? The Americans' best fighters were in the pro ranks by then, but they couldn't go pro. So, but anyway, let's take a look at the Cuban amateur boxing system. That's legendary. The Cuban boxing system. Now, foreign influence contributed to the development of the Cuban amateur boxing system. Before the Cuban Revolution in 1959, Cuba's achievements in amateur boxing were diminutive. Now, components of their boxing style were derived from American pro boxing. After the revolution, Eastern European methodology replaced the American influences. Andrei Chervoyenko of the Soviet Union trained Teofilo Stevenson, and his compatriot Vasily Romanov has trained boxers as well. And the Cuban government used sport as a means of exhibiting the success of the new socialist government, and winning medals in international competitions became a high-profile means of promoting the ideals of Cuba. The Soviet Union sent experienced boxing coach Andrei Chervoyenko to help develop Cuban fighters in order to assist their socialist brethren in their goals. Now, along with Cuba's own Alcides Segarra, Russia, Chervoyenko helped develop a comprehensive national recruiting and training program based on the Soviet model. Alcides Segarra became Cuba's boxing head coach in 1960, and then later passed on his position to Sarbelio Fuentes in 2001. Now, the Cuban boxing system, along with other sports programs, start in grammar school, right? Start as little kids. Schools are considered a high priority in the Cuban education system, and it's there a potential athlete can be recognized. They start these kids out like 5, 6, 7 years old. Talented youth are sent to specialized schools. They take them out of the regular school, put them in specialized schools, right? At a very young age, elementary school age, where they can focus on enhancing their skills. From there, the young boxers train throughout a very competitive youth program. The ones that graduate from the program are sent to the top school in Wajay, where they train using advanced drills and exercises. The support that the state gives is crucial to the advancement of the highly technical boxing program. So it would seem that they would have wanted their fighters to turn pro early, before they removed the ban in 2022, so they could reap the rewards of all this training they gave them. Had this big time Cuban boxing system, training them since they was kids, but then wouldn't let them turn pro. So, that seemed kind of backwards, right? Boxer Teofilo Stevenson, who had won 3 Olympic gold medals in 1972, 1976, and 1980, has made many contributions to Cuba and Cuban boxing. He is equally known for his sportsmanship, receiving the UNESCO Pierre de Coubertin Fair Play Prize in 1989. After retiring from boxing in 1986, he served as both in the Cuban parliament and as a vice president of the Cuban Boxing Federation. After a career of fighting for their country, most Cubans continue to stay in the sport, many as administrators or trainers. Through this way, the knowledge and experience is passed down to the next generation of athletes. I still don't understand why they went so long, wouldn't let their fighters turn pro. Mike Mazik has arrived. What's up, Mike? Boxing in Cuba today. Okay, so let's look at look at some women boxing in Cuba now. Okay, got to look at the women's boxing. They just recently let women start. Women had to go into hiding and box. When they had all the Cuban amateur boxing system, all of that, women weren't allowed in that. All those years. 2022, they just legalized women boxing in Cuba. Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah, 2022. Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about some women's boxing in Cuba now. Cuba's women boxers are fighting to make history. They're fighting to make history. All right. Salute, Mike Mazik. How are you today? Okay, yeah, we're going to talk about some women's boxing in Cuba now, because they are truly fighting to make history. They just started letting women, just 2022, 3 years ago, the same year they lifted the ban on boxing. They lifted the ban on women's boxing at the same time. Fidel Castro had passed away by then. I think, is his brother still president down there, or did he pass away too? I don't know. I know after he died, his brother took over. That's how they do it down there. Donald Trump tried to do that up here. You know, he said when he died, his son or somebody gonna take over. No more elections. But again, that's a story for another platform. Okay. Yeah, Cuba's women boxers are fighting to make history. Okay, excuse me for a minute, please. How's everybody? We're just like a few days away from fight week for the big Bud Canelo showdown. Man. This time in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about what happened. Will Canelo win it? Will he stop Little Bud? Or will Little Bud turn into Big Bud and go up there? Will he stop Canelo? No, I don't think so. Will he be able to control the fight dominantly enough to get a decision from the judges? He's going to have to need a Bivol type performance. Somebody was saying Bud going to have Canelo where Canelo need a knockout. Nobody gets Canelo to the point where he needs a knockout because the judges don't. Canelo could be down 10 rounds or nothing. All they got to do is win 1 or 2 rounds straight. The judges got him right back in the fight. Canelo never needs a knockout. Not with the way the judges love him. But yeah, Cuban women. Now near a decaying training complex outside of Havana, Cuba, a group of young women are gathered in an attempt to make history. They're here to compete in a sport they were previously barred from practicing in their country, boxing. We're in a special era, says Jorge Noriega, a trainer for the newly formed women's boxing team in Cuba. Now, the island has a storied history when it comes to the sport of boxing. The men's team has brought home more than 41 Olympic gold medals and 78 medals overall, second only to the United States in total. But women were prohibited from boxing at the Olympic level for years. In 2012, when women's boxing was officially added to the Olympics roster, the Cuban government refused to let their women compete, citing fears around pregnancy risks and women's health issues. Pregnancy risks. What, you gonna get pregnant by competing in the Olympics? Well, I don't know I only know what that meant. I mean, if they're already pregnant, they're probably not gonna go no way, but fears around pregnancy risks, that's crazy. But let's continue. After a series of high-level government meetings and clinical studies, Cuba officially allowed them to begin practicing in December of 2022. We've been waiting for this for years. This is a conquest for women, says Ileana de la Garcia, one of the women on the team. Now, while many of them have been training for less than a year, they've already had some success at the Pan Am Games last year, and they're just getting started. This was the last Pan Am Games. Now, most days before their training starts, the women share dance routines, flirt with their male counterparts, and gossip for a bit. But once coaches like Santiago Chavez arrive, they tape up their hands and prepare for their training. They have a job to do, and a lot of them have sacrificed too much to get derailed now. After a light jog, they find their place in the gym and start with circuit training and shadow boxing. To call the facility modest would be a massive understatement. The training area consists of rusted free weights, 2 old makeshift boxing rings, and hand-me-down headgear and gloves from the men's team. But at least they let them compete. But they keep going, knowing there's a lot at stake. Bringing home Olympic gold and a sense of pride and glory to their families means that much more in Cuba, which has struggled under the crushing weight of a 60-plus year embargo. The island has continued to face chronic food shortages, lack of resources, rolling blackouts, and economic challenges that have forced many of its citizens to eventually leave. The women's national team has a clear focus. They want to become champions and open the door for more women boxers in the future. Okay, let's see what's happening in the chat. Mike Williams said, and that's why Bivol took some big shots from Canelo. He just can take them. That's the question. Can Crawford? Yeah, that's a good question there, Mike. Can he? People forget Crawford coming all the way from like 135 or something. You know? So, wow. That is a big jump. I don't think he's going to do it, but hey, I'm going to be here the week after that. So, I mean, if he does it, I'm going to eat my crow. Okay. Yeah. But that's a good point there, Mike. Can Crawford take him? Because Bivol was a 175-pounder. Remember, Canelo went up to fight Bivol. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Bivol was bigger than Canelo. Taking shots from bigger guys like Bivol stood in there and went toe-to-toe with John Pascal. Bud ain't never faced no big, heavy punches like that. I don't think he can. Land of heavyweights. Cuba is considered a force in boxing. The island has been a standout in the sport for years, collecting more than 40 gold medals and turning out boxing legends like Teofilo Stevenson and Jose Nopales. Now, for the first time, women have been given a chance to compete, and they've got their sights set on the Olympic Games. But first, they make a breakthrough through the qualifiers in Thailand. Yeah, that was they was talking about the previous Olympics. Now, this lady, her name is Jacqueline Estornell. Okay, Cuban boxer. Like many of her teammates, Jacqueline Estornell came from a different sports background. The middleweight had been a former member of the Cuban wrestling team, making an unlikely jump to boxing when she was 37. So I don't understand that. They let women wrestle, but outlaw boxing. That's crazy. Now, she works tirelessly at improving her agility and technique every day to boost her natural punching power. She finds a lot of her motivation from her 13-year-old son, who lives with her family in Guantanamo while she trains. He's really proud, she says. I tell him, Poppy, at school, you also had to be a good athlete. You had to be disciplined with your studies and with your training, and both support each other. She finds a lot of her motivation from her 13-year-old son. Okay, I read that. Okay, there's a shot of the gym. Training ground. Now, while the equipment is modest, many of the women have been working to transform themselves into world-class fighters in less than a year. Their seasoned coaches know all too well that the formula is less about what they have and how well they use the tools they're given. Rolling with the punches. The coaches are honest about the uphill climb the boxers face as a new team. The biggest challenge is that we are confronting athletes and big figures who we don't know. The athletes from the United States, for example, are strong powerhouses, Coach Noriega says. At the same time, he notes that Cuban boxers are drawn from a long lineage. The Cuban boxer is tied to the blood of all those world champions, he says. Yeah, but they're going up against women that's been doing it for a long time, and they basically just getting back started. This is the team captain, Legenis Calla, or something like that. Legenis Calla was back at home 6 months before they formed the women's team. She was back at home caring for an 11-year-old daughter. She'd given up the sport to focus on her family and took on odd jobs to bring in income. Yet, boxing kept calling her back. I had tried to hang up my gloves, but I couldn't. Life just put boxing in my path, she says. And they had world-class coaching down there in Cuba. Several coaches working with the women's team are seasoned, long-time pros, deeply familiar with the Cuban boxing scene. Santiago Suarez has brought all his knowledge and training to the group and feels deeply proud of what they've accomplished. They had to sacrifice a lot. It is a difficult task, but it is an honor for me to be able to make history with this team. Blow by blow. The team has tested out their skills for the first time, but they know that they're also setting a foundation for women who want to take on the sport in the future. We haven't been practicing boxing in Cuba in an official way, but already we have some outstanding results, says Suarez, citing 1 silver and 2 bronze medals they won in Central America. Knockout ambitions. Okay, this lady's name is Jacqueline Estornell. Jacqueline Estornell has been dedicating hours and hours to her training, all in hopes of making it to the world stage. My dream right now is to get a medal at the Pan Am Games and to qualify for the Olympic Games. My big dream my whole life has been to be an athlete. I'm working hard and I feel in shape. I hope my objective and my dream comes true. Knowing everyone's strengths. Many of the women come from other sports, including taekwondo, wrestling, and track and field. Still, many of them found an instant connection with boxing, and each brings a different set of strengths to the sport. Each person in the group has distinct qualities. Not one person is the same, says Coach Suarez. He points to Legenis Calla's constant dedication as something that sets her apart, and Ariana Lamote's past experience with combat sports as a benefit while training. And it's a tight-knit team. Very tight-knit group they have down there. Coach Jorge Felix Noriega works with some of the athletes. They often start their training as early as 5 a.m. They spend the day circuit training and shadow boxing, working non-stop to achieve the next step in their professional careers. Okay, this is Julia Mendez. Julia Mendez takes a breather after arduous training. Their gym facilities are limited, but they're doing everything to eventually stand up to boxing powerhouses like the United States and Brazil and create the same legacy male boxers have constructed in Cuba. Okay. The captain's view. Team captain, Legenis Kayla felt an instant connection to the sport when she first started. I had only been training for 2 weeks, and I liked the feeling. I felt a little nervous, but I liked the adrenaline you feel in a fight, and that's what I got. That's when I got excited and stayed a while longer. Now she has won her first silver medal in international competition as a featherweight and is excited to see where else her tenacity takes her. Okay, and it's a win for Cuba. With a difficult embargo that's been in place. Wait a minute. We went past that. Okay, yeah, winding down. Future visions. Ariana Lamotte perfects her jab in a corner. Her gaze serious, barely ever breaking into a smile. She is clear-eyed about what she wants the future to hold. In 5 years, I see myself as a household name in Cuba. In 10 years, even more so. With my home and my future secured, she says. Boxing has helped me a lot because it has given me another status. Now I'm a member of the national team. Yep. Okay, let's see here. Yeah, that was about the women. Okay, yeah, we want to talk about the Cuban boxing system now. Okay. You're never going to cover the Cuban boxing system. Well, let's finish this off. I kind of cut it short, but we were almost finished anyway, so. Yeah, I was taking a shortcut. But we were almost at the end. Okay, so let's finish it. Go down in the books. Now that women's boxing is approved, my dream has changed, one boxer says. I want to be a champion, win medals, and make history. In each other's corner. Through all their training, the women have built bonds with each other as they work to achieve something bigger together. It's like a family, Lamotte says. Some pairs help me, even if they're not in my division, and I help them, and that's how it continues. And that's it, okay? Let's look at that Cuban boxing system. The legendary classic. That's Guillermo Rigondeaux right there. Legendary classic Cuban boxing system now. The Cuban boxing system. 6. Right, okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, the Cuban boxing system. You can't talk about Cuba and not cover that. Okay, did anybody come in? Let's see. All right, yeah. Here we're going to talk briefly about the Cuban boxing system, the style and everything, I think. There it is. Style. Cuban boxing style. Okay. Now, the Cuban boxing style is a defense first, technique focused approach, prioritizing footwork, angles, and precision over power. Often described as a dance of offense and defense with an emphasis on rhythm and intricate timing. Rooted in a rich history of amateur boxing, this style employs excellent footwork for evasion, creates opportunities for devastating counterpunches, and uses the lead hand to control distance. You don't get a lot of knockouts in this style, but you don't see too many Cuban boxers with 90% knockout ratios and stuff. But yeah, there is one. We're going to talk about him. Luis Ortiz had an 85.2%. The veteran Fox, remember Luis Ortiz? Yeah. One of the few, he had an 85.2% knockout ratio. Now, key characteristics of the Cuban boxing style has a defense-first mentality. Cuban boxers prioritize avoiding punches and creating a defensive shell before launching their own attacks, reflecting the scoring system of amateur boxing. Technical precision. The style emphasizes perfect form, accuracy, and control in every movement, utilizing short, sharp punches that are technically flawless. And of course, mastery of footwork. Cuban boxers are renowned for their fluid and elusive footwork, allowing them to control the distance, create angles, and evade opponents' attacks with a dancing-like grace. Rhythm and timing. A deep sense of rhythm tied to Cuban culture is fundamental to the style, influencing the timing of footwork and punches for optimal effectiveness. And of course, counterpunching is a staple of the Cuban boxing style. Counterpunching. Rather than overwhelming opponents with brute force, Cuban fighters excel at setting up and landing precise, hard-hitting counterpunches when an opponent leaves themselves open, right? Use a lot of good feints, force their opponent to go first, then counter them, right? Now, how it developed? Amateur focused. The style was perfected within the highly competitive Cuban amateur boxing program, which nurtured talent from a young age. Cultural influence. The innate rhythm and musicality in Cuban culture are deeply embedded in the fighter's movements and footwork in the ring. Strategic development. The style was strategically built to excel within the amateur scoring system, which rewards speed, accuracy, and technique over sheer power. In essence, the Cuban boxing style is an art form that uses athleticism and artistry to outwit opponents. It's a blend of physical ability and strategic thinking, creating a beautiful and effective system for winning through skillful and intelligent fighting. All right. So now let's talk about some of these great Cuban boxers. We got some former Cuban boxers and some active ones like Andy Cruz, David Morrell, Robisi. Islam De Lara still active, ain't he? Yeah. But let's talk about some of the former ones first. First, let's talk about the greatest Cuban boxer of them all ever. Never threw a punch as a pro, but still thought of as the greatest Cuban boxer ever. Y'all know who I'm talking about. The great, the legendary. Just almost as legendary as the great Thomas Hill. Teofilo Stevenson, right? Yeah, let's take a look at Teofilo. How can you look at Cuban boxing and not look at Teofilo Stevenson? That would be criminal. I guess we're gonna look at him. I can't find it. Okay, bear with me for one moment, please. How's everybody though? It's Thursday, at the end of another big week of boxing history. Tomorrow is going to be the truth. You know, first Friday of the month. Time for our active boxer is going to be Earl Spence. But like I've been saying all week, is he still active? Damn. Well, he's going to be active tomorrow. Yeah, we're going to talk about the truth tomorrow. His life and career. Okay. But how good was Teofilo Stevenson? Glad y'all asked. Let's see. How good was he? There's him and Muhammad Ali. They was trying to set up something between them, but you know. One time in 72 at the Olympics, this sounds like Don King. They didn't say no name, but at the 1972 Olympics in Munich, Germany, they knew Teofilo was going to be there, so they went over there and this American promoter offered him, I think it was $1 million on the spot, had his housing already set up in the United States, never go back to Cuba, right? But Teofilo said no. What's the $1 million to the love of 6 million Cubans? So he went back home. He couldn't defect because he could never go back, you know. And he loved his country like that. Then remember in the late 70s, they offered Fidel some money, a substantial amount, and Fidel accepted. He was going to let the fight go on between Teofilo and Ali, but then United States State Department stepped in and stopped it. They didn't want all that money going to Cuba, so just wasn't meant to be, the fight between them two. Just wasn't meant to be. Now, early Ali, 60s, early 70s, would have destroyed Teofilo. But as we got into the late 80s, I don't know, because Ali got beat by Leon Spinks, remember? So, shoot. You know, Teofilo probably would have got him in the later 80s, 70s. Because Teofilo was still winning the Olympic gold medal, still in his prime. Because Teofilo is younger than Ali. And he was still in his prime, and Ali was getting up in his 30s, late 30s and stuff. So I'm glad they didn't have to fight then. Look how big and fat Ali is. And look at Teofilo. He might have killed Ali in that ring, man. Look at him. Nah. I don't know. That might be after Ali's good. I know he wasn't thinking about fighting nobody then. Yeah. He's big as a house in that picture. But let's talk about Teofilo Stevenson. Now, Teofilo Stevenson was an exceptional Cuban heavyweight boxer, widely regarded as one of the greatest amateur boxers in history. He won 3 Olympic gold medals, 1968, 1972, and 1976. And he was known for his powerful punches, technical skill, and impressive size, standing at about 6'4" tall and weighing around 220 pounds. During his prime, okay? Fought about 220 during his prime. Well, that's what he weighed in at, you know. But anyway, Stevenson's style was characterized by his ability to control distance, throw powerful combinations, and maintain a strong defensive posture. Okay? That's what he's just talking about, you know. Cuban boxing style is classic. Control distance, throw punches, powerful combinations, maintain a strong defensive posture. All staples of that Cuban boxing style, those 3. He had a remarkable amateur record, reportedly winning over 300 fights with only a handful of losses. His dominance in the amateur ranks made him a legend, especially in Cuba, where boxing is highly revered. Now let's talk about that proposed matchup with Muhammad Ali. Let me slow down. I said proposed matchup with Muhammad Ali. Let's talk about that situation, okay? Now, if a proposed fight between Teofilo Stevenson and Muhammad Ali had materialized, it would have been a highly anticipated matchup, given both fighters' stature in boxing history. Now, here are some factors to consider. Okay, number 1, skill sets. Now, but also depending on what time frame you're talking about too. Now, Ali was known for his speed, agility, and innovative boxing style, which included exceptional footwork and quick reflexes. Now, this wouldn't have been no 1978 Ali, but anyway, Stevenson, while also skilled, had a more traditional boxing style, but was incredibly powerful. Number 2, we just matching up Teofilo Stevenson and Muhammad Ali. Okay. Number 2, experience. Now, by the time Stevenson was at his peak in the mid 1970s, Ali had already established himself as a heavyweight champion, having fought and defeated some of the best fighters of his era. Stevenson's lack of professional experience compared to Ali's extensive career could have been a significant factor in a matchup between them. Number 3, fight dynamics. In a hypothetical matchup, if Stevenson could have utilized his power effectively, he might have posed a threat to Ali, but Ali's speed and ability to adapt during fights would likely have given him an advantage. Ali was skilled at frustrating opponents and could have used his movement to evade Stevenson's punches. But the biggest thing in this matchup would have been when it happened. That's what I think. Here we go. 4, era and circumstances. Now, the political climate of the time, including the Cold War tensions, complicated any potential matchup between American and Cuban fighters. Stevenson remained an amateur for his entire career, which limited his opportunities to face professional fighters like Ali. In summary, while Stevenson was an outstanding boxer who could have presented challenges, particularly with his power and technique, Ali's experience, speed, and adaptability would likely have made him the favorite in a head-to-head matchup. The fight would have been fascinating to watch, showcasing 2 different styles and eras in boxing. Now, 60s Ali had no problem at all with Stevenson, would have washed him. But late 70s Ali, I don't know. I'm picking Stevenson. Okay? So, when you're talking about a Teofilo Stevenson Muhammad Ali matchup, you got to consider when. That's the biggest question of all. When would it happen? What time frame? So, what were some of Stevenson's most notable wins in amateur boxing? Some of his most notable wins in amateur boxing for Teofilo. Let me refresh this thing because I'm probably missing people coming in. No, okay. What were some of his most notable wins in amateur boxing? Because he never turned pro. Now, Teofilo Stevenson had a remarkable amateur boxing career with numerous notable wins that solidified his legacy. Here are some of the most significant achievements. Some of his most significant achievements. 1968 Mexico City Olympics. That was his first gold medal, right? He beat American boxer Big John Tate in the final. Now, Big John Tate went to another Olympics too. I never knew Big John Tate was in 1968. I thought he was in 1976 with Sugar Ray Leonard and all of them. I'm gonna have to look into that. But Teofilo won his first gold in 1968. 1970 World Amateur Championships. He got a gold medal. He claimed victory in this tournament, further establishing his dominance in the heavyweight division. The 1972 Munich, Germany Olympics. Got his second gold medal, this time against Kazakhstan's, no way, man, Vasily Gerov. But he got his second gold medal in 1972. The 1974 World Amateur Championships got another gold medal. He continued his winning streak by taking home another gold medal, solidifying his status as a top amateur heavyweight. 1976 Montreal Olympics, got a gold medal in that one. Yeah, this is the one he beat I don't know. I think this is the one he beat Big John Tate was in 1976, not no 68. Yeah, he beat Big John Tate in 1976. This was his third gold medal. Okay, and he was the first one to do that. Now we got two others. Laszlo Papp was first because he did it back in the 60s. We got Laszlo Papp, we got Teofilo Stevenson and Felix Savon, both from Cuba. Laszlo Papp from Hungary. All countries that didn't allow their fighters to turn pro. Now, Hungary did allow Laszlo Papp to turn pro later in his career. Okay. But in his prime, he was fighting in the Olympics. Now, throughout his amateur career, Stevenson faced and defeated several other notable boxers, including... No way, man. They got Patty Ryan. Patty Ryan fought back in the damn 20s. I don't know. Okay. So let's move on from that. Because I know he beat Big John Tate in 1976. Let's look at some other Cuban boxers. That's all messed up. God damn. Okay, some other Cuban boxers now. Former. Then we got some active ones too. We're going to get the formers out the way first, though. Okay? Who are some of the best boxers from Cuba? Okay? Some of them still fighting right now. I think Andy Cruz is going to be an all-time great when it's all said and done. You know? I really do. Yeah. I ain't sold on Morrell yet. He hadn't fought nobody, and then you see when he got in there with Benavidez. But that is David Benavidez too. There, he make a lot of people. And David Morrell he's put up a good fight. Mm-hmm. He dropped Morrell. Morrell dropped Benavidez. So yeah, but I just like Andy Cruz better. But both great boxers. Great Cuban boxers. Okay. Who are some of the best boxers from Cuba? Glad y'all asked. Let's talk about it. I want to know too. Some of the best boxers from Cuba. Okay. Okay, let's hear it. Let's look at that. Some of the best boxers from Cuba. Former. We got some actives too. We're gonna look at the formers first. That's Felix Savon right there. Some people think he was better than Teofilo. Felix was a heavyweight too. He also won 3 gold medals. Some people say he's the best amateur heavyweight ever. Felix Savon. Mm-hmm. Yes. Won 3 gold medals too. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, Felix Savon, we already talked about Teofilo. Felix Savon is, some people call him the best heavyweight Cuba ever produced. Teofilo was a heavyweight too. Some say he's the best amateur heavyweight of all time. Okay? Now, due to Cuba's system, he was never allowed to turn pro. And he never succumbed to the multi-million-dollar offers to effect. Yeah, he got offers just like Teofilo did to effect, yeah. Because Don King, Bob Father, all them, they knew that Felix Savon would have bought them money in that ring. But Savon loved his country, never defected. Savon absolutely dominated the heavyweight division of amateur boxing for over an entire decade, winning gold medals at almost every single major tournament that he ever was in, okay? Including being a 3-time Olympic gold medalist and 7-time world amateur champion gold medalist. not just medalist, 7-time world amateur champion, gold medalist. He finished his incredible amateur career with 383 fights. He won 362 and lost 21. Until he retired, no amateur heavyweight could compete with him. Among the many great pro fighters from Cuba, the best could be Jose Napales. Jose Napales turned pro. He was a Customado fighter too. He turned pro in Cuba in 1958 before the communists took power. Okay, boxing was outlawed 4 years later in 62. That was before the revolution. But he fled to Mexico following the communist revolution of 1960, right? And then they banned it in 62, but Napales was gone. He went to Mexico in 1960. Napales, a great technical pugilist, so slick, fans called him Butter. That's how slick he was. They called him Butter. Now that's slick right there. Anytime your nickname is Butter. Napales would go on to become a major star in his adopted country of Mexico. Now, Napales' big breakthrough year was 1969 when he won the welterweight title by stopping tough champion Curtis Coates. 2 months later, he beat Coates again in a rematch. He finished his best year by defeating former champion Emil Griffith, earning the Rings Award for 1969's Fighter of the Year. Yep, that's the big one there. They all got ESPN, Sports Illustrated, Box Rec. All of them got Fighter of the Year, but the big one is Ring Magazine. Ring Magazine was doing Fighter of the Year before Sports Illustrated, Box Rec, all of it was even heard of. 1921, okay, when Ring Magazine started it. That's the granddaddy of them all. And Jose won that, 1969. That's the only one I pay attention to. When the Fighter of the Years come out, Ring Magazine. That's the big one. And Jose, well, I don't know about now. I'm talking about back when Nat Fleischer had it. Nat Fleischer was still living then, but now Oscar had, I think, in Turkey, don't Turkey on it now, it don't mean shit now. I'm talking about back when Nat Fleischer was running it. It was a big one then. It's the little one now. But Napales won that in 1969. He would reign as undisputed welterweight champion for most of the next 6 years. And it's all from 69 to 75, he was undisputed welterweight champion. And he's also remembered for his gallant challenge to the great Carlos Monzon in 1974, when he was 34 and had been boxing professionally for 16 years. He went up there and messed with Carlos and got beat. And he tucked his tail between his legs and ran back down to welterweight. Now, Jose was great, but he wasn't that great. He wasn't going to no middleweight beating no King Carlos Monzon. Somebody should have told him. But he was great at welterweight. Okay. Next, the Cuban Hawk, Kid Gavilan himself. The Cuban Hawk, Hall of Famer, Kid Gavilan, was among the great welterweight stars of post-World War II era in the late 1940s and early 1950s. I don't have no pictures because I was sitting there making my pictures last night, about 10. And I woke up sitting in front of my laptop like 3 o'clock this morning. Then I got in the bed, man. I was so tired. 5 hours later. I'm serious. I started my pictures like 10 and woke up right here at this desk at 3 o'clock this morning. I'm like, Cass, take your ass to bed, man. So we don't have pictures of everybody today. But anyway, yeah. They called Kid Gavilan the Cuban Hawk, right? And he was among the great welterweight stars of post-World War II in the late 1940s and early 1950s. In an era filled with incredible talent at 147, Gavilan had the misfortune to be at his best when the incomparable Sugar Ray Robinson ruled the division. Gavilan lost twice to Sugar Ray by decision, but when Sugar Ray vacated his welterweight title to move up to middleweight in 1951, Gavilan captured the vacant title by beating John Bratton. He beat Hall of Famers Billy Graham, Carmen Basilio, and Carl Bobo Austin. Yeah, those are all great middleweights too, but they was all at welterweight then. Gavilan's loss of his championship in October 1954 to Johnny Saxton remains one of the most controversial decisions of a controversial era. That's when the mob was running things. Yeah, because Gavilan, let me tell you this story. Gavilan, Ike Williams was fighting Gavilan, and Ike Williams wouldn't play ball with the Mafia, so they told Ike Williams, okay, so you won't play ball with us. We don't care if you win all 12 rounds. You're not getting no decision, so you better knock him out. And Ike went the distance and won the fight, but he lost. They gave it to Gavilan. So now in this fight that we talking about with Johnny Sexton, the same thing happened to Gavilan. He wouldn't play ball with the mob. And so they told him, you better get a knockout, and went the distance, and they gave it to Sexton in one of the most controversial decisions of a controversial era. So the same thing he was the beneficiary of ended up happening to him. He wasn't with the mob back then, but they was trying to punish Ike Williams, so they gave Gavilan the fight. And this time they was punishing Gavilan and gave it to the other guy. See? Saxton was a mob-backed fighter too, the guy he was fighting. The Calgary Herald's Murray Rose reported after the fight that 20 of 22 ringside writers scored the fight for Gavilan, but the judges gave the decision in the fight to Saxton. 20 of 22 ringside writers gave it to Gavilan, but the 3 judges. Remember we talked about doing the Mafia show? The Mafia had total control because, like in the Williams and Gavilan situations, if they couldn't get control of the fighter, they already had control of the judges. So you couldn't beat them, right? They had total control. The fighter wouldn't take the dive, then bribe the judges. That's how the mob did it, man. It was crazy. What's up, Pearl Sir in the building? How are you today? We were talking about boxing in Cuba today. Yeah, boxing in Cuba. I done dropped my notebook. Oh, there it is. In the floor. I don't know how it got way over there. But salute, Pearl Sir. Yeah, we talking about some Cuban boxers. I was just reflecting on how the mob did those fighters. Gavilan was the beneficiary of the mob corruption, and then the same thing worked against him later on, when he wouldn't play ball with him. Yeah. Okay, we just talked about some of the great Cuban fighters, though. That was Kid Gavilan. And then, after he lost that, 20 or 22 ringside sports fighters gave the fight to Gavilan, but the 3 judges who mattered gave it to Saxton. And that was the last time he was getting up in age then, the last title fight he ever got. He lost his title in that fight, never got another shot because he wouldn't play ball with the mob, right? And once he lost that title, the mob said, well, see you. Wouldn't want to be you. He never got another title shot. Next is Kid Chocolate. And Kid Chocolate was Cuba's first ever world champion. First Cuban to win a world champion. Yeah. Meant to kill her. Yeah. Meant to kill her. Right. Now, we too, where we at? Oh, Kid Chocolate. Yeah, he was Cuba's first world champion. Kid Chocolate was. Mm-hmm. He's a Hall of Famer. He was born, government name, Eligio Sardinas Montalvo, right? Again, Cuba's first world champion. He won the 130 junior lightweight title in 1931, right? But this comes with a footnote, as it would be another 40 years before the junior titles were completely accepted up into the 70s. They had that one in 1931, but didn't have a lot of, it wasn't sanctioned. We had the NBA and the New York State Athletic Commission, right? They didn't really sanction it that highly. They look at it that highly, but it was called a title fight, and Kid Chocolate won it. So he was the first Cuban champion. Okay? But he was a legend in his era because he taught himself how to box by watching films, and amazingly, had been a sparring partner of Hall of Famer, the great Benny Leonard, before he had a single official fight, amateur or pro. Okay? Now his career record was an incredible. He had 151 fights. He won 135, lost 10, had 6 draws, 51 knockouts. But you know the Cuban fighters, they not big on knockouts, right? He had 135 fights, 51 knockouts, okay? We got some, well, let's see. We haven't had no link time in a minute. We had a couple more Cuban fighters too. Let's get them in. We had some active ones, but we ain't worried about no active ones. We had Andy Cruz, David Morrell, Frank Sanchez, Arsles Iglesias, Erislandy Lara. These are all Cuban fighters. William Skull, Robici Ramirez, Julio Cesar La Cruz, Joan Pablo Hernandez, Luis Ortiz. He's the only one that got over 80% knockout ratio. Yeah. Okay, let's see. I'm going to put the link in, and then we can continue or go on the link or whatever. Okay, but I'm going to put it in. But how's everybody? It's Thursday. Man, we're a couple of days away from fight week for Canelo and Bud Crawford. I still got Canelo. My decision. But hey, the talk is almost over. We are right there on top of it, man. I can't believe it. I'm excited. I don't know about y'all. But damn, this thing, I remember when they first signed this fight, and now it's here. Next week is fight week. Wow. Ooh, that's crazy. I just, Bud came all the way from 135, man. Now, if he, went 147, 154, 160, 168, he might have a chance, but, just jumping like that. But hey, I'm going to be here. I'm going to eat my crow if he wins, So, but the good thing is right up on us. We're going to be talking about it in less than 2 weeks. We're going to be talking about what happened. Yep, because it's next weekend. And Monster and MJ is also next weekend. Somebody said that is right after Canelo and Bud. That card starts from Japan. You know how they do their cards early in the morning. They don't cater to us. They have their fights at their own time. But somebody said it's right after Canelo and Bud card, and the Monster and Nway comes right in. So that's beautiful. Wow. That's a good fight too, Monster and MJ. I'm picking Monster. Until he loses, I'm not picking against him. You know what I mean? The kind of fight that's hard to pick against. You know what I mean? The Monster. They owe you anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, Nakatani, I don't know. I might be going against the Monster on that one. Nakatani. I hope we get that. We should be getting Nakatani. It's just 118 and Monster 122. Just 4 pounds. Shoot. Nakatani 118, 122. He'd still probably be fighting at the same weight that he usually fights at anyway. Once he rehydrate and everything, big difference. I mean, it's just 4 pounds. So I hope we get it. What y'all think? We're going to get Monster and Nakatani? But Monster got to get past MJ first, though. Right? And you better believe Monster ain't overlooking him. Monster probably say, y'all talk about Nakatani. I got to get past MJ. He's a man of his word, though, because he stood in the ring after his last fight and said MJ was next. And now, here we are. Yep. What's up, Shaw Law in the building? Good to see you today. Yeah, we was talking about boxing in Cuba today. That's another great channel. Anybody not subscribed to Shawa, get over there and subscribe to her channel. Great boxing, knowledgeable boxing talk over there. Okay, so now that's the link, but let's continue with talking about some of these former Cuban boxers now. Yeah, we talked about the history of boxing in Cuba. We talked about the women boxers in Cuba, the Cuban boxing style, Teofilo Stevenson, Felix Savon, the two great, that's what we're doing today, Shava. Two great heavyweights from Cuba. Some people pick Felix Savon over Teofilo as the best heavyweight down there in Cuba. Yeah. Some people say Felix, they both got 3 gold medals, you know. They both got 3 gold medals, so only 2. And then the other one is from Hungary, Laszlo Pep. You know, they had to keep fighting. They weren't willing to defect, you know, so they just kept fighting in the amateur ranks. Through no fault of their own, their country wouldn't let them turn pro. They just lifted the ban in 2022, just a few years ago, right? It ain't been that long. Yeah, 1962 to 2022. Yep. Jose Napales, he got his championship in 1959, and then when the revolution happened in 60, Napales got up out of there. He went to Mexico and he was already pro, right? So I'm wondering what would have happened there. He was already pro, and then the revolution happened, they banned pro boxing. He had to go, because what would they say? Well, you can't fight professional anymore, Jose? That would have been weird, but he did the right thing. He rolled up. Let's talk about some other these great former Cuban boxers. I don't have no pictures today. I fell asleep last night right at the laptop for told you I fell asleep at 10 o'clock, and it was after 3 o'clock when I woke up, sitting right here. How about Kid Ternero? Another great Cuban fighter. Kid Ternero. He was a middleweight. He never fought for a world title, but he still was a top fighter in the division during the incredibly competitive 1930s and 40s, when fighters without the right connections often went begging for opportunities, regardless of talent. Yeah, he was right around that mafia era, right? Never got a title shot. Probably wouldn't play ball with him. Now, Ternero had a great rivalry with Homer Williams, one of the Murderers Row fighters, right? Another legend of the era, who never got his rightful shot. Homer never got a title shot either, right? And Ternero beat the technical wizard once. He also recorded a win over light heavyweight and heavyweight champion Ezzard Charles. Kid Ternero got a win over Ezzard. He retired to Spain and later trained exiled fighters such as Jose Legra. Yeah, when Kid Ternero left too, when the communist government took over. He went to Spain. And then he trained exiled fighters, such as Jose Legra. And he had 96 wins, 32 losses, 16 draws, 34 knockouts. Yeah, I told you the Cuban fighters, they're not trained to knock people out. You know, we went over that system. Benny Parrott, another great Cuban fighter. He was the one that died after the fight with Ezzard Charles, remember? Yeah. Benny Parrott, another great Cuban fighter. Yeah, he was the victim of one of boxing's most famous tragedies, dying in the ring against Elmer Griffith while defending his welterweight title in March 1962. He was just 25 years old when that happened. Well, he died 10 days later. He went unconscious during the fight and never regained consciousness. Just 25 years old, right? Like so many boxing tragedies, Parrott's own toughness and tenacity contributed to his downfall. In April 1961, he lost the welterweight title to Emma Griffith by round 13 knockout, suffering terrible punishment in the process. In September of that same year, he won the title back by split decision in a bruising rematch. Then, just 2 months later, he went up to middleweight to face world champion Gene Fullmer. He was knocked out by the bigger man in devastating fashion in round 10. He was down on the cards when that happened. Just 3 months after that, he defended his welterweight crown in the rubber match with Emma Griffith. And we're going to cover that trilogy one of these Mondays. That was the rubber match when that tragedy happened. He was nearly knocked out, but he was saved by the bell in round 6. Wow, isn't that fate, man? If he would have got knocked out in round 6, that tragedy wouldn't have happened. But the bell saved him, right? Now, there was serious animosity between Parrott and Griffith. I told y'all the story. And the entire fight was a give and take war. Griffith did come out as being gay, right? And Parrott had called him a derogatory name. In 2 other press conferences or the weigh-ins leading up to that fight, right? And man, Griffith was, I think he landed almost like 30 unanswered punches on him, and the referee was trying to get through, like he was like hitting him with one hand, like blocking the referee from getting through it. It was bad, man. Yeah. So he almost got, but Parrott almost got knocked out in round 6, but the bell saved him. Isn't that something? If that knockout would have happened, the tragedy wouldn't have happened in round 12. So in round 12, Griffith trapped Parrott in the corner and unloaded on him with one of the most brutal finishes in boxing history. Yeah, landing 29 unanswered punches, 18 of them in the last 6 seconds before Parrott collapsed. 18 punches in 6 seconds. And it said the referee was woefully slow to step in and protect Parrott. No, it wasn't the referee. I saw that. The referee was struggling to get past Griffith. He was right there trying to get in there, man, but he couldn't get in. Griffith was, look, watch that. It was in the 60s. Griffith was like holding him back because he was pissed off at Parrott for calling him that name. So you can't blame the referee for on that one. I've seen that many times, yeah. He couldn't work his way in there. But yeah, that was bad. And he collapsed and never regained consciousness after that. Mike Massey still got bugged by KO. Okay, Mike, it's upon us. We only got 1 week. Next week is fight week. Yeah. I don't know about KO though. Triple G couldn't even do it. Canelo never been down in his career. That man got a chin. His chin look hard, man. Look at Canelo. His chin look like a cinder block, man. It's square. You hit Canelo in the chin with your bare hand, I guarantee you'll probably break it. You'll probably break your hand. If you hit him with your bare hand in the chin, you probably break every knuckle in your hand. And every finger, too. That man got a chin. I don't know. But Mike still got bugged by knockout. Salute, Mike. We'll see. Canelo never been off his feet, though. I think he got 67 fights. Right? And he's 63, 2-2. Right, Puro, if you're still in here? I think he got 67 fights. Yeah, but yeah, round 12, that's what happened. And he went into a coma at the end of the fight and never woke up. Yep. That was terrible. Jose Legra, another great Cuban fighter. Jose Legra. Now, Jose was a 2-time featherweight champion with outstanding speed. He was known as the pocket Cassius Clay. I don't know why he was known as that. The pocket Cassius Clay. I don't understand that. Outstanding speed, known as the pocket Cassius Clay. Okay. And an early exile from Fidel Castro's revolution, Legra fought out of Spain and built his reputation on the European circuit. So remember that other fighter from Cuba that fought earlier and he went to Spain and it was training fighters, so Jose was probably one of the fighters he trained. Yeah. Who was it? I gotta know. We just talked about it. He went to Spain and was training fighters from Cuba. And then it says Jose went to Spain. Quintanero. Right, Quintanero. Jose was probably one of those fighters that Quintanero trained over there in Spain. But Jose Legba was a two-time world champion. Great fighter. Great Cuban fighter. Yeah. Okay, yeah, the pocket Cassius Clay, though. Legba had wins over such notables as Ernesto Miranda, Clemente Sanchez, and Howard Winstone. Now, he lost to the great Vicente Saldivar and Ida Joffre, two of the greatest bantamweights of all time right there. Ida Joffre is the greatest bantamweight of all time as far as I'm concerned. Carlos Zarate is second to Ida Joffre. Carlos was great, but you got to give it to Ida Joffre. And Legba was stopped in his final fight by young Alexis Arguello, the explosive thin man. Wow. And Jose won 133 fights, 11 losses, 4 draws, 50 knockouts. Yeah, you don't see too many Cuban fighters with no 80, 90% knockout ratios. They just not trained for that, right? But Luis Ortiz had 85%. Yep. The great Sugar Ramos. Most some Cuban fighters. At the start of his pro career in 1960, Sugar Ramos fled to Mexico, right? Because that was when the revolution had just happened and the communist government had taken hold in Cuba. Sugar Ramos fled to Mexico, right? The hard-punching featherweight became a national hero in his adopted country. In March of 1963, Ramos captured the featherweight world title when he knocked out Davey Moore in Dodger Stadium. In a tragic moment, Moore's head bounced off the bottom ring rope and he died from whiplash to the brainstem. Yep. Yeah. That one there was the one where the Pope chimed in on how bad boxing was. And a lot of television stations, it just started like the late 40s. TV had been in there barely 20 years, and a lot of TV stations stopped showing boxing for a while after that happened to Davey Moore. Yeah. Yep. And that was against Sugar Ramos of Cuba. Well, he had went to Mexico by then. Yeah. That sounds bad. Whiplash to the brainstem. Ooh. Now, Ramos dropped the belt in September 1964 to Vicente Saldivar. And he never got a chance to fight for the featherweight title again after that. And Ramos was 55 wins, 7 losses, 4 draws, 40 knockouts. That's not too bad. 40 knockouts and 55 wins. That's like, what 70-something? Something like that. I got the calculator. 72.7. That's pretty good for a Cuban boxer knockout ratio. You know, the way they trained it, everything. It's B3 Picks. What's up, B3? How you doing today? B3 Picks in the building. Next week is fight week, B3. It was a big Canelo, Bud. Mike Bassett got Bud by knockout. I got Canelo by decision. But the good thing about it, we are going to soon see. Did we talk about Kid Chocolate? No. Kid Chocolate is next. Yeah. Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Let's look at a few of these active Cuban. We got a couple more former ones. Luis Manuel Rodriguez. Now, he had the welterweight title for a very brief time in the early 1960s, right? And he's been largely obscured by the man he won it from and lost it to, Emil Griffith. Took it from Emil and lost it back to it. They fought 4 times. Emil beat him 3 or 4. Yeah. And Lewis never fought for the title again after losing it to Emma. Wow. Yeah, we looked at Kid Gavilan and Nepalese. Yeah, we had some. Let's look at a couple of these active fighters real quick. Andy Cruz. I can't find the cursor. And they will represent our active fighters. I didn't have time to make the pictures last night. Oh, Shaw, you mean the one up, the pocket Muhammad Ali. Yeah, that is interesting. I will have to go research that and see where that comes from. The pocket Muhammad Ali. Wow. Yeah, Andy Cruz. Tomorrow is our profile day, right? Friday, and every Friday we profile an active fighter. So this week is going to be Earl the Truth Spence. But my question all week is, man, is he active? Is Earl active? We haven't fought since that Bud fight in 2023. And it's been over 2 years now because remember, it was in July 2023, remember? So, man, well, he's going to be active tomorrow on Cast Sports for a couple of hours. Okay. Yeah, we're going to be looking at Earl tomorrow. What's up, Define Arnie One in the building? I still haven't made that Puerto Rican top 10 yet, Define Arnie One. I'm going to do it this weekend. I know I said that last weekend. But I was thinking about it the other day. I know my number one, though, Define Arnie One. My number one is Carlos Ortiz. Okay? For the greatest Puerto Rican fighter of all time. I got my number one, Carlos Ortiz. Okay? Is that your number one, Define Arnie One? It's about time to get up out of here now. So, but we had 10 active fighters, Cuban fighters. Let me mention them again. We had Andy Cruz, David Moore. Andy is currently 6-0 with 3 knockouts. David Morrell is 12-1 with 9 knockouts. Frank Sanchez, 25-1, 18 knockouts. Slays Iglesias, 13-0, 12 knockouts. Now that's a good knockout rate there. Wow. I don't know why I didn't figure that one out. Let me do it right quick. What did I say? 13-0 with 12 knockouts. That's 92.3%. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Erislandy Lara, 31-3, 3 draws, 19 knockouts. Just some active Cuban boxers since it was boxing in Cuba today. We do a different country every Thursday. William Skull, 21 wins, 23 wins, got that 1 loss he just suffered to Canelo Alvarez, 9 knockouts. Robeisy Ramirez, 14 wins, 3 losses, 9 knockouts. 2 of his losses is to Espinoza, remember, Rafael. Julio Cesar La Cruz, 4-0, 4 knockouts, 100% knockout ratio. 4-0, 4 knockouts. It's not many fights, but that's 100%, right? Yohan Pablo Hernandez is 29 wins, 2 losses with 14 knockouts. And finally, Luis Ortiz, 34 wins, 3 losses, 29 knockouts. Now, Luis is 85.2% knockout ratio. That's excellent for a Cuban boxer. You know, that Cuban school does not train for knockouts. We went over it. There's Jarrell. What's up? And Ken Saul One and Jarrell in the building. 2 of my favorite people. What's up, Ken Saul One and Jarrell Hattie? Good to see y'all today. Appreciate both of y'all. 1,000,000,000% in the building. All right. So we're going to get ready to go. But tomorrow, I appreciate everybody that stopped by. Tomorrow we got is our profile day, and it's the first Friday, so we're going to do an active box, semi-active. Earl Spence. Is he active? He hasn't fought in a while, but he's not retired neither, so yeah. Earl the Truth Spence tomorrow, the life and career of Earl the Truth Spence. But I appreciate everybody. I hope y'all enjoyed the show. Appreciate Shaw for stopping by today. Hope she stops by again to see us. And Jarrell Hattie, Ken Saul Love 1, Define Arnie 1, B3, Shawa La, Pearl Sir, Mike Mazik, Thomas Hill, the legendary Thomas Hill, Crush the Legend, Mike Mazik, and Miss Cass. I appreciate everybody, 1,000%. We'll be back tomorrow. I think we got Just Do coming up in a few moments. Nate's with that balanced, unbiased boxing talk. Yesterday I said biased, unbalanced. I was backwards. Balanced, unbiased boxing talk. Everybody, Just Do was in here too. Everybody gets their Just Do at Just Do Boxing for sure. Okay? So I'm going to holler at y'all tomorrow because y'all know the deal. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's The Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Everybody have a great afternoon. Appreciate y'all 1,000%.